Okay, looks like we've got a good number of people joining, so I will kick off. Good afternoon, welcome, hello everyone, and thank you for taking the time this afternoon to join myself and my colleague Emma in our webinar series about thriving as a mental health first aider. My name is Amma Afrifa-Chi, and I'm Head of Culture and Wellbeing at Mental Health First Aid England. I'll be hosting this webinar with my co-host Emma Toombs, who will introduce herself shortly. Given the increase in people experiencing mental ill health and poor mental health, especially in this current climate, with COVID-19 as a pandemic and also other global events such as Black Lives Matter, we know that those in the role of mental health first aiders may be called upon to provide support more often and more so, including in the workplace. So, I think it's really important that prioritizing your own mental health alongside looking after others is really crucial and very important. So, hopefully this webinar will help raise awareness of the tools and practices that you can use and supporting your own mental health and well-being, but also others that you will be supporting too. So, I think I'm really looking forward to this webinar, as I mentioned, and actually having conversations around, some of the experiences you might be having, but also to give you some support. But without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Emma to introduce herself and to also give you some sort of parameters of what this wellbeing session will be about. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you. Thanks, Emma.
You're welcome.
So I guess, thinking about why am I here today, so I have been a mental health first aider for a while now, having my own experience of poor mental health in the past and also supporting family members through tricky situations. So that's where my kind of drive to learn more about the mental health first aider role came from. And when I spoke with Mental Health First Aid England and we were talking about who helps the mental health first aiders, so to be able to do this session with everyone today is fantastic. So we can really look at some of the things that you're probably doing already, but also perhaps inspire you to try something different around how can we help you to thrive even more. And before we even get started, what we'd like to do is a quick poll with you, really as a check-in, because we know how important it is as mental health first aiders to check in with ourselves and also the people that we help. So we might as well start with that. So we're going to launch a poll with you now, and this should come up on your screen. And there's a couple of questions on there. So really want to check in with how you're feeling right now. And there's a couple of options in there. So whether that's great, happy, neutral, down, fed up. From speaking to the people that I speak to, I know there's a whole host of stuff going on right now for people. So it'd be really good to get a feeling of where we're at as a community of people. And then we've got a couple of other questions around how confident do you feel managing your own stress? And how clear are the boundaries in your role as a mental health first aider? So, and this is really going to be dependent on the boundaries that you set yourself, but also there's probably some boundaries perhaps in the organisation that you work for as well. So really interesting to see your thoughts and feelings on those questions. So it's great to see that we have a large percentage of people feeling great and happy. That's really good. However, we also want to make sure that we're supporting those around us that are feeling perhaps neutral, down or fed up. So we're looking at providing you with some tools today. And today we are going to look at managing our own stress and those boundaries within the role. So I'm just going to end that polling now so we can capture that. And we will do a poll at the end of the session as well. Okay, so the stats on that, I'll just quickly share the results with you so you can have a look. So we've got a great 44% there of happy, and then obviously we need to make sure that we're working with our community to increase the neutral, down and fed up. We've got some confidence in managing our own stress and somewhat clear around our boundaries, so that's great. So we will be able to help you with those topics today in our session. The next thing that I want you to do is to consider this question. So we want you to think about someone you love, okay? So take a moment and think about someone you love. So Emma, who's springing to mind for you right now? Who do you love?
Oh, I love quite a lot of people, but I guess my immediate person that comes to mind is my husband.
Good, that's good.
So yeah, I'm thinking about my husband.
And how long do you think it would take, Emma, for you to think about saying yourself?
And myself, ooh.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I do know that it's easier for me to think of others than myself. I do know that I'm a lot more harder with myself than others too. And I think it's a really interesting question you ask, Emma, about just sort of self-care and just loving yourself, because we often are in a society or in we often feel that that's quite a selfish act to think about yourself, but it's quite easy to think about others. So yeah, it'll be a little bit difficult for me to think about myself, but quite easy for me to think about others that I love more so.
Absolutely, and that's why we're raising this question today is, who would you think about? And for me, there's a whole host of people that come first. So my kids, my husband, even my furry animals and friends. And then it would probably take me a long time to get to myself. And as we are working as mental health first aiders, we need to make sure that we're coming up there a lot higher in that ranking. So that's what we want to encourage you to do today. And this is a fantastic quote that we want to share with you, which is around being kind to others and, importantly, realizing that this includes being kind to yourself as well, which fits really nicely with loving ourselves and being kind. And as mental health first aiders, we naturally want to help others. That's, probably why we're drawn to that role. However, what's important is that we can sustain that. So, it's kind of how do we make sure that that's a consistent approach? And by doing that, we need to make sure that we are looking after ourselves. And I would like to take you back to when you first did your course, your mental health first aider course, when you were asked to think about 2 hours that you would spend on yourself. I know this was a piece of homework for me when I was on the course, was to go away and spend 2 hours on myself, and what would that look like? And my question to our community that have joined us today is, when was the last time you did that? When was the last time that you took 2 hours just for you, not doing for something for someone else? And what did that look like? And we're going to share with you some ideas on some of the things that you can do, bringing that 2 hours back into your life. Because if you're like me, you may not have maintained that since the course. So let's look at that today. So what are we going to look at today? We're going to start with the 10 keys to happier living. And we're gonna work through this at pace, because this really is about prompting you, reminding you of the great stuff that you could be doing, but also that you can be encouraging people that you work with and people that you help to do as well. Then we'll slow down a little bit, and we're going to spend some time at looking at addressing your stress, and also the importance of boundaries. And just looking at kind of our polling, that looks like it's definitely something that we need to work on as a community. So that's what we're going to look at today. So we'll start with the 10 keys to happier living. Now, this was created by Action for Happiness, and you can find out more about this on their website, which is actionforhappiness.org. So you can certainly check that out. And I think they even do a monthly calendar. Is that right, Anna? Yeah,
they do.
I've seen that. Yeah,
they do. Every month they have a calendar that makes you focus each day on how you can take care of your well-being.
Absolutely. So that might be that might be an action you want to take away from today's session, is that you're going to check out the calendar and share that with people you know. And it's always easier doing stuff as a team, isn't it? So perhaps it's a calendar you might want to use as a team. So we're going to get into those 10 keys to happier living, and we're going to move at pace. And what I'd like you to do is just take the time today to think about how could you use this in your life right now, or how are you using it in your life right now. So the first one, I feel like we're already there in this one. Because we're mental health first aiders, we naturally are giving, okay? So holding out a helping hand, making others happy, and that then in turn gives back to us, because we get a return on that, which is great. So some of the suggestions that we'd like you to think about today are, how could you share your skills or offer of support? Well, you're doing that, so that's a big tick in the box for being a mental health first aider, and thank you. And And, you know, some of the stuff that would have been covered on your course is about asking our friends, family and colleagues how they are. And that's so crucial, that listening without judgment. That was one of my biggest takeaways from the Mental Health First Aider course. And it's not always easy. So it's kind of a skill that I know that I'm honing every day. So if we move quickly into the next one, because we know that we're doing this, like that's our role, that's what we've learned on that course. The second one is relating. So thinking about the people around you that offer a valuable pool or support. So right now we're in that, aren't we? We're in a community of people with the same cause and working together. So that might be some things that you might want to think about is, do you currently meet up with other mental health first aiders? So could you do that? Or is it actually you'd like to meet up with some people that have a completely different interest to you? It doesn't all have to be about mental health first aid. And turning off distractions to chat with friends or family about your day. Now we're going to do a little bit of a check-in on this one as well. Now on Zoom, if you're a fan of Zoom and you use it on a regular basis, that's great. So you'll probably know about the annotation tools. If you're not, what you can do on Zoom is go to View Options, scroll down to Annotate, and there is an option to use a stamper or stamp. It's my favorite annotation tool, which just shows what I get excited about. So if you want to get your annotation tool ready, and I'll be interested in your thoughts on this one, Emma. So I'm just going to reveal the slide. So using your stamper, and you can choose any stamper you want, we want you to stamp here, what is your distraction scale? So are you sat there now thinking, because you were checking your phone and your email, you're thinking that you're at a distraction scale 1 because you want me to repeat it again? Or are you at a distraction scale 10 that you are so good at avoiding distractions that you put your mobile phone in a box when you're about to have a meal with family, or you're switching off from social media and electronics? So where would you say you sit on the scale? So to find your stamper, you would go to View Options, and then scroll down to the annotation function. If you haven't got it, don't worry. If you just want to just think about the fact, where do you think you'd sit? Would you be a 5? Would you be a 10? Would you be a 1? So let us know. We've got a love heart on the screen already there. So we've got someone who's found their stamper. Where do you think you'd fit on this scale, Emma?
Wow, depends on what day of the week it is. I think generally I can, depending on what I'm doing, I could be easily distracted. So I think I would be maybe like a 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I do try to not have my phone when I'm having dinner, for example, with my husband, or if I'm having conversations with friends. I try to be in the moment of that. But I think generally everything else outside that it's a free for all. So I try and not be distracted, but there's sometimes where I completely lose at that. I've been intentional about my distractions.
Yeah. And sometimes we get feedback, don't we? So I know that I get feedback from, my son, for example. So being present is so important, isn't it? And I think sometimes it's good if you can have that kind of relationship where you get the feedback. Looks like we're having a few challenges with the stamper option, which is fine. Really, that's just for us to be able to see where you feel your distraction level is at. But the most important thing is having that awareness. So as long as you've got that awareness of where you sit, and maybe you need to work on it and think about some positive strategies to help you to avoid distractions, that's your takeaway from today. Okay, so let's clear that lonely love heart. Oh, it's gone. That's good. Okay. So the next one for you to think about, and I feel like exercise sometimes has that kind of Marmite effect. You normally have people that are just so into it, and they're the people that are always talking about how, for example, on Strava, where they're like, look how far I've gone, and this, that, and the other. And then you've got people that are probably more like me, that kind of have a go and try. I wouldn't necessarily rank myself up there. But exercising has such a great impact on our mental health and our physical well-being. So thinking about how can you build that into your daily life, So it doesn't become a separate activity. I've certainly found that helps me. So, for example, the other day, we could have got in the car to go to my friend's house. She lives, 10 minutes away, and we decided as a family we would get on our bikes. And it was a little bit more, it was a little bit more effort because we had to get bikes out of the shed, and we could have just got in the car. But the benefits of that were amazing. So think about what works for you. Emma, have you got anything that you're doing in this particular area, or that you'd like to do?
To be honest, it's a work in progress for me. I am actually praying for the days that gyms can reopen because I think it's really interesting. So for me, I think I've compartmentalized in my brain where I do exercise. So this whole sort of lockdown has been, I must admit, a little bit difficult for me in my exercise regime, just because I've not been consistent with it. So for me, I think it's very much a case of just doing things like you, where rather than jumping in the car, can I walk to it? There are moments or opportunities where if I'm having meetings, for example, I don't necessarily always have to be on Zoom, but I might just take a walk and talk at the same time, or just walking around for a few minutes, little things like that. Because I do love exercise, but in my mind, my exercise happens in the gym. So home is my sanctuary. So it's been very difficult for me to do exercise in the house. But I do try to do like little bits of walks or, stuff with my husband to just ante up a little bit some of the stuff I'm, the exercise piece. So, but I'm waiting for the gym. Trust and believe I'll be the first one signing up for those classes when they open up again.
It was interesting. I had someone say to me the other day that they listen to a podcast as a reward for walking. So it's almost like I cannot listen to my favorite podcast unless I go for a walk. So I don't know how that works, but for some people that might be a negative thing. But I think it's about finding what works for you, right? If it gets you out and it gets you moving and you're learning at the same time, that's brilliant. 100%.
And I think for me, one of the things I do on good days, so when the sun is out, I actually make a conscious choice of walking, because it's a lovely day. So, we're in England. When are we ever going to get a lovely day like this? So you just take the opportunities where you can. But I agree with you. I think it's doing what works for you and not feeling pressurized to do things because other people are doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so that's exercising. I'm sure everyone's been thinking about what they can do and how they can move more. And hopefully you're making a note of that and committing to yourself, because you are worth it. The next one that we're going to move into is awareness. So taking some time to switch off autopilot, be in the moment. So perhaps it is taking that walk and really, looking at nature and really absorbing what's going on around you. So we can do this by paying attention to our senses, and we can have a go at this now. So thinking about, what do you see right now? And it could be on the screen or around you. So looking out the window, I can see it's relatively sunny where I am. What can I hear? Well, I don't know about you, but I can hear the dogs in the background. So I hope that's not causing too much of a distraction. And how does it feel around me? Well, it feels great to be at home, but also to be surrounded by like-minded people on this session. And for us, it's about really making sure that we do this on a regular basis, just to take that moment and to switch off from autopilot and to really enjoy living, because I think that's so important.
100%.
Yeah. Then we've got trying out. Now, Emma, I know that you have been doing some trying out, so I don't know if you want to share your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, so I think the trying out bit is really interesting. So there's things that I love doing that I haven't had the opportunity to do pre-lockdown. So I am quite an avid interior designer. I say this, but I'm more to interior decor than design. So I like to reupholster stuff and kind of upcycle things. So for me, and it's actually really therapeutic for me, I really get lost in the zone whilst I'm doing it. And actually on Sunday, we had bought new garden chairs, and I didn't like the color it was painted, so I set myself into doing this whole restripping and repainting. But for me, it's really cathartic. I really enjoy it. So I've been trying sort of new things in that sense of just where I can do stuff a bit more creatively. I think I do think of myself as a creative person. So I've been doing sort of that kind of interior design stuff, but I've also been trying to read a bit more. So I'm dyslexic, so it's quite hard sometimes for me to pick up a book and finish reading it. So what I've tended to do is I've signed up to, I have signed up to Audible. I've been part of Audible for quite a while, but what I'm now doing is actually buying some books so I can actually read it in a different way and be able to do more reading that way. So those are the two things I've been trying out, which I'm thoroughly enjoying actually.
Yeah, and that sense of, I can hear from you talking is kind of like that sense of confidence and I can do this, and the reward from seeing the end product, so your garden chairs, and knowing that you did that, that it's all part of our self-esteem, isn't it? Which is great. Oh, you're going to have to share. I feel like I need to see a picture of this work.
I actually do have an Instagram page, so I can share that with you later.
Oh, okay. I'm sure I'm not going to be the only one that will want to see it. So we'll see how we can make that one work. Okay. Right. So direction. Oh, this one, I can't tell you how much I relate to this one. So having a goal and meaning that is meaningful to us. And remember to celebrate that progress along the way. And I think it's so easy. I'm the kind of person that's always looking for the next thing, always moving on to the next goal. What am I going to do now? What am I going to study now? And it's really easy to not look back and see how far you've come and what you have achieved. So that reflection and, direction is great, and it provides that sense of structure, and it helps us get out of bed each day. That for me is so important. But also looking back and seeing how far you've come is really key.
Actually, I just really want to reaffirm that, because I think we tend to do less of the celebrating and acknowledgement, and I think we need to find that not just at the end, but like it says, along the way. I think it's really important just to take a moment and actually just take stock of what you've achieved, or what, the elements of how you've supported others. And I think we don't celebrate enough, and that's something that we should include every day, even if it's a case of, and I think it's one of the happiness tips anyway, around just celebrating and being grateful every day of just even the smallest achievements that you've managed to do.
Yeah. And I think if you're in an organisation where not only, can you do this for yourself, and I know we're talking about ourselves right now, but how great would that be if you could influence within an organisation that you look back and celebrate? Because I think, businesses are also so fast paced that we're always moving on and looking to the next thing. So how do we look back and celebrate? So both is really good. Right, okay. The next one is one of my faves. Are we allowed to have favourites? I don't know. Is that okay? So resilience. Although we can't always choose what happens to us, we can choose our response. And I know since being on furlough and now going through redundancy, this is an approach that I've used and is really working for me. Is before I respond with how, what decision am I going to make next, I need to choose. So what are my options? And then I can decide what I'm going to choose. So I just love this one. Resilience, I absolutely love. So what we want you to think about, so our lovely mental health first aiders, is to think about how could you build on your resilience? So how could you build this in to your everyday? And there are so many resources out there that you can learn about resilience, and there's great resources that you can look at. But also one thing that I find really useful is connecting with other people and learning from them around how are they resilient, and hearing people's stories about how they've been resilient through different situations. So what about you, Amma? What helps you with resilience? Putting you on the spot.
And again, that's a really interesting question. I think it depends on my energy. But I think for me, what really does help me with resilience, again, is that whole journey of look how far you've come, and also taking stock of thinking about just some of the things that, I've been through and I'm still here, that in itself, I think, like I say, we go through life and we go through every day without just even realizing what we've achieved and just the impact we've even had on others. Because sometimes I think we have this element of having it to be it has to be big, or it has to be monumental before the acknowledgement comes through or the acceptance comes through. So for me, I think just again, the resilience piece is just trying, and it's not an easy thing for me. It's a day-to-day progress that I go through, but for me, it's very much knowing that I am more than enough, and the things that I can do, I will do. The things that I can't do, I will find out who can help me to do that, or I'll let it go. And I think letting go is a huge piece around resilience, because once you're able to understand what is within your control, what is in your capacity to change, everything else kind of, well, for me at least, falls into place, or everything else will have a solution or a way. And I always try and approach that to build my resilience that way in terms of how I think. Like I say, it's not every day that I get it and I'm great. There's some days, again, depending on my energy and how I feel, that it might not work, but I always try and come back to base. But also, I think also putting in boundaries. So what I will accept, what I will tolerate, and what I won't tolerate are also elements of how I build my resilience in sense of self-protection. Because I think we can give a lot and give too much without, thinking about, okay, when do I need to take time to think about me for now? So again, it's putting in boundaries in place. Also, I think my resilience is very much having the sense of openness. And in that way, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are some elements where, and I think, again, it comes back to what you can control or not, but just having an open mind with things, because we know life happens and things don't pan out the way you want to. So again, the way I view things and the way I see things and how I make decisions and think about things help me build the resilience as to how I then deal with it next time. But also having that open-mindedness knows that the next time might also be different. So what am I learning throughout this is the question I ask myself. And that's how those are the different ways I try to build resilience within myself.
Absolutely. And I think a big one, I totally agree with all of your points. And I think another thing I've noticed, there's a question that's come in around what resources could you use for resilience. So I think sharing these 10 key tips to happiness. So if you were to do all of these 10 things, that's going to help you with your resilience. But also that going back to the mental health first aiders training, when we think about the stress container and we think about managing that if we can keep a handle on our stress container, then that's going to support your resilience. And we have got some other things at the end of the session around the building boundaries and things like that will also help. So thanks for that question that's come through. Yeah, there's loads. You can use these 10 keys to happiness, the stress container, all of that great stuff with your team. Yeah. So just reinforcing, you don't have to find new things. The stuff we're talking about now is what can help you with resilience. Okay. Oh, okay. We've got a comment come in. The things I can do, I will. The things I can't do, I'll find someone else who can help me, or I'll let it go. Oh, I love that, David. And I think that one of the biggest learns for me going through furlough and now redundancy is, oh my goodness, the difference it makes when you do ask for help. People do want to help you. So being clear on what you need is really, really good. So thanks, David. That's great. Brilliant. Okay. Next slide. There we go. Emotions. Okay. So this links into what we were talking about earlier. So positive emotions can build a buffer against stress. So that's why we need to do these 10 keys to happiness that will help us with our resilience and managing our stress. And being grateful. So, there's lots of research out there around if you can spend every day thinking of 3 things that you are grateful for, you will live a happier life. And I recently, I don't think I've told you this, Emma, I recently spoke to Mr. Motivator and I asked him, how does he stay motivated? And he said the way that he stays motivated and happy, and he's had a tricky life, he's been through some stuff, but he said, if you just think more childlike, so have more fun and enjoy your life, then you will be happier. And I've taken that, and if Mr. Motivator says that, you've got to, haven't you? You've got to take
Mr. Motivator.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, no, but I think there's some truth in what he's saying. I think there's definitely things around how do you turn around a positive into a negative. And like I said, it's easier said than done, but the thing is, it's doable. And emotions are very personal and private things. And I think just as much as acknowledging the positive is also acknowledging the negative. So acknowledging the feelings that you're going through, whether positive or negative, and acknowledging that these are feelings that you are feeling, and it's okay to feel that way, but then it's not getting stuck in the negativity of it. It's actually, how do you turn it around? And coming back to, like you're saying, Mr. Motivator has been through a lot. I'm sure we all have had our own sort of doses and peaks and troughs in life. And, the key thing around it is the gratitude. And I think so often we forget to realize what we have now because we're always reaching for the next thing. And I think it's really important, again, to center and think about just looking at where you are now, what you've got now, and that you are enough enables you to be more positive about thinking about how you want, whatever else you want to achieve or whatever else you need. So yeah, I think gratitude is really good. And laughing, brilliant. I agree with him on the childlike thing. I think we take life too seriously sometimes. And my husband's always telling me sometimes that I'm taking life too seriously because he's very much the joker in our family. But I love that he can make me laugh because you need that in your life. Laughter is the best medicine, and I couldn't, say it enough. So definitely, I think finding the time to do things that make you happy, that make you laugh, that make you stop being an adult for a minute, if you can, is always great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot we can learn from kids about being happy. And we've had some great comments come through on the Q&A. So grateful that friends reach out to me since I became a mental health first aider. Grateful for recognizing I can stop and reframe a thought. Gratitude is key to living a happier life. It helps to keep focus on the positives and keeps hope alive. Great. Oh, and we've got some other ideas around resilience. Oh, what a caring and sharing community. I'm grateful for this community. There we go. Brilliant. Okay. So we've got our last couple now before we move on. So we've got acceptance. So, this is huge, isn't it? So accepting who we are and what we are. So no one is perfect. Long to be somebody different gets in the way of making the most of our own happiness. What would your compliment be to yourself? Oh, okay. So I want you all to be thinking now, if you were going to give yourself a compliment right now, right this minute, what's your compliment going to be? So I've bought you a little bit of time there, Emma.
I think I know what I'm going to say.
Okay, go for it.
You're doing okay. That's my compliment. You're doing okay, Emma, and that's good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay, cool. I'll be interested if anyone does want to share their compliments. Love that. Rosemary is there with you. I am enough. That sounds fantastic. And Maureen is saying she's at her happiest when she's playing with her 5-year-old grandson. So yeah, there we go. Brilliant. All right, okay, some great comments coming in there. So moving on from acceptance, then we move into meaning. Now, this is one that I particularly struggled with when I was placed on furlough, because my job was such a part of the meaning in my life and so much of my purpose. So I kind of felt like my meaning was I felt it was all thrown up in the air, if I'm honest with you. So when we talk about meaning, people who have meaning in their lives experience less stress, anxiety, and depression. And I guess it's about what do you attach meaning to that is really crucial. And having multiple things would be my advice to staying healthy and happy, and not putting it all in. I think there's a phrase, isn't it? Not putting all your eggs in one basket. I don't know if we can use that one. But being a mental health first aider gives you purpose. So, regardless of who I'm working for or when I'm working, for me, being a mental health first aider isn't just about being at work. So I think it's a really good one to work with, because it doesn't matter where you work, or whether you're in your mum role, which is what I do, or whether I'm a friend or whether I'm a work colleague, it's always there with me. So it's really important that we keep thriving so we can continue to focus on that meaning in our life. So there we go. So that is the final one of our 10 keys. Did I skip ahead? No. Okay.
Oh, you're good.
10 keys to happier living. So yeah, so really thinking now, you know, before we move on to addressing your stress, I'd like everyone to really take a moment now to think about if you were just to do one of those 10 things, yeah? I mean, there's so much you could do, right? We've talked about so many things and we could probably expand on that even more. But if you could just do one of those things, what one thing could you do? And we will share these resources as well so you can reflect back on them, and there are resources on the website as well. So just have a moment and think about what thing could you do. Amma, have you got anything that's springing to mind for you right now?
Well, definitely more exercise until the gym's open. That's something I could definitely do. There's quite a few actually. I think it's just, again, I mean, just talking and sharing my experience and now has just made me just rethink about, you know, just the affirmation of gratitude and just finding more time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all about that, building it into routine, isn't it? Okay, we've got some comments coming through in the Q&A. I love this. So we've got some ideas around taking that 2 hours to myself, reminding myself that I'm enough today, gratitude diary. Got some great stuff coming in. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that. So we'll now go straight into addressing our stress. So you may recognise this. This is one of our resources that we use, which is really being able to identify what that source of stress is. So what a lot of people do is they try and deal with the kind of like outcomes or the symptoms of stress, whereas what's more effective is to really look at the source of stress and really understand where what you are feeling is coming from. So just having a look at this, and this handout is available on the website. This is a really good tool to use to really understand, why am I feeling stressed right now? And for me, I'm going to be totally honest, mine is this one over here, the changes at work, and right at the bottom, redundancy. That has definitely caused me some feelings of stress. And then if I know that, then I'm better equipped to be able to deal with that. And this is a great tool that you can use when helping others as well, to be able to ask the right questions. And not every element of stress is on this handout, but it's certainly a good kind of starting point from. Amma, from a point of inclusion, what do you think we should think about with this particular slide?
I think it's an interesting question, Emma, actually, and I think as mental health first aiders, what we need to think about is who we're serving. And who we're supporting. When I mean serving, as in who we're supporting. And I think it's really important to understand that each individual is different. So you also have to be very aware and cognizant of the fact that there'll be different layers that person might be experiencing or going through in terms of their experience. So the point of inclusion is, you know, we haven't dealt with a pandemic globally as we are going through now. So even though we've got these sources of stress that look at life changes and emotion, if you add on that layer of what people are experiencing through this pandemic, and as we ease out of it, that is also, they'll be experiencing new things that probably isn't covered on this stress sheet. But then also when you add and look at it from the lens, because as you remember when I introduced and welcomed everybody, I talked about COVID, but I also spoke, for example, about Black Lives Matter. So when you're thinking about it from an inclusion lens, you need to be really cognizant about and aware of who you're talking to or who you're supporting. If that individual is coming from an ethnic background or a background that has a different lens of inclusion, whether it's, you know, LGBT, disability, whatever, that in itself heightens the experience of stress and the experience that they're going through when it comes to their mental health. So it's not, I mean, we do say anyway, it's not a one size fits all, but when you actually look at it from a position of empathy, but also a position of understanding, and this will happen when you ask the right questions, right? When you're talking to individuals, don't look at it as just a one-off experience. Each individual is going through their own thing, but there are multiple layers that add on to whether that stress is amplified or experienced in a different way. So that's pretty much what I want to highlight, not just from a stress container perspective, but just generally when you are supporting individuals, whether it's in the workplace, family, outside, is to also have that in the back of your mind that this individual might be experiencing different things. And also, if you're not being able to see the individual, because if you're on the phone, for example, or if someone's not showing their face visibly, there are certain questions that you will need to ask to enable that person to open up to you. So the ultimate goal is that you are providing the right support for that individual. So it's really important, I think, to approach things and approach this role from an inclusive lens, because we are not just one strand of an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Love that. And I think there's, so that really leads us nicely into the next tool, which is the weekly wellbeing checkup. Now, I love this because it really gives you a kind of framework to deal with from a reflection point of view. This is kind of the tool that underpins everything that we've talked about today. So this will build in your 10 sort of key steps to living a happier life, because this is really going to get you thinking about, what am I doing? So it's almost like a weekly review with yourself. How am I doing as a mental health first aider? And how am I looking after myself? So where's my mental health today? How am I looking after my well-being? How's my thinking? So are the thoughts that I'm having helpful? And am I managing my stress container? And I've written on my notes here, make sure to stress the point that you need to make this a priority to book it in. This is a kind of a personal note to myself, but also to share with everyone, because I think it's really easy to move appointments with ourselves. I know that if I commit to an appointment with somebody else, I won't move it. I'll do everything I can to attend. But sometimes when it's an appointment I book with myself, it can get moved or rescheduled or even bumped. So be really interested to hear everyone's thoughts about how they're going to ensure that they do this weekly wellbeing checkup. And it also helps you to make sure, if you are supporting team members and things like that, that you're leading by example, because if we're not doing this for ourselves, how can we expect other people to do it? So yeah, what's your thoughts on that, Emma?
No, 100%. I think, anything that we try and support others with, we have to try to be role modeling that. Otherwise, there's just no real point. But I think this is a great tool to use for yourself, but also, again, to use for those that you're supporting. So, it helps the conversations, you're asking the right questions, because some of these questions in itself can lead to a whole opening up of a conversation where the individual tells you a bit more about themselves. So I agree with you. I think very much so, be very selfish and put in the time to check in on yourself, whether it's every 5 minutes of the day, start or finish, or an allocated time every week. It's really important that you do that.
Yeah, because it's going to make you a better mental health first aider. And
Absolutely.
I think, we often go, oh, but that's a really selfish thing to do. No, we're doing it for others. So you must do this weekly check-in to make sure that you are good enough to be able to help others. So, and that's how I make it stick. That's my advice to myself. Okay, so some really good tools there to help us to address our stress. And there are some other really great tools that help you to do that on the Mental Health First Aid website as well. So swiftly moving into building boundaries, and we've definitely touched on this one already, the importance of having those boundaries. I know it's covered on the Mental Health First Aid course as well, being really clear about what our role is and what we do, what we're not going to do. And again, that is individual. So, dependent on what your situation is, how much you can contribute, all of those things you need to consider as being a mental health first aider. So some key tips that we want to share with you today is, the first one is being really clear about your limits. You can't set boundaries for other people to follow unless you know what your limits are. So think about your physical, emotional, and sort of well-being, mental health related limits, and think about where your handover points are. And we know through being mental health first aiders that there are some fantastic resources for signposting. So making sure that you've got that toolkit there ready in your pocket. Giving yourself permission. So knowing that it's okay to have boundaries. This is, in fact, it's essential. It's something you really need to do. And So with that, you can get an element of guilt, can't you? Because you feel like you should be doing more than what you are or what you're prepared to do. But knowing that actually by having good boundaries, it will make us a better family member and a better mental health first aiders. So boundaries aren't just a sign of healthy relationship, they're a sign of self-respect as well. So give yourself that permission. And the final one, which has been the theme throughout, is making this self-care a priority. So that weekly well-being check-in, those 10 keys to happiness, make it a priority within your diary, within your schedule, because it's going to help you to thrive. On that, Anna, we've got this fantastic guide to talk about.
So we've got a great guide on our website around being a mental health first aider, the guide to your role. And as I said, we'll share the links at the end and I think after this session. But on our website, we have some really good resources around being a mental health first aider, not just your guide, but also how your organizations can support you. So one of the call to actions is definitely download the guide, have a look at it, also share it amongst your organization around your, mental first aiders that you've got in your organizations, but also the piece around how the organization can support you is also quite crucial. So I would also recommend sharing that with line managers and having how you can have the conversation internally in your organizations. But they're really great toolkits. They look at, again, how you can think about your responsibilities, as it says there, how you engage your employer in conversations and to support you, but most importantly, again, how you can support yourself and also how you support others remotely. Because as I mentioned in the previous slide, there's a lot of stuff we're doing now that's virtually that you might not be able to see individuals and it might be a phone call. So how do you support them that way? So my call to action is definitely go to our website, download this toolkit. It's really good and essential to help you in your role.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're giving you lots of toolkits. I can't even say it. Lots of tools to put in your pocket. And the next tool that we want to share, and I think this is fantastic, is Hub of Hope. So having this in your pocket, literally in your phone, is a great resource for us as mental health first aiders because, we will sometimes need this support as well. So it brings together organisations and charities across the country that offer mental health advice and support. So you can use this with the people that you're helping, but also we can use this as mental health first aiders as well. And this is just an example of some of the support that's available. We are going to share some other resources after this session with you, but this is a definite one to download on your mobile device. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our session. So we've got a short Q&A and a poll that we need to finish, but we've briskly walked through the 10 keys to happier living. We've looked at how can we address our stress and also building boundaries. So all of these things are going to help you with resilience as a mental health first aider and then in turn to be able to thrive. And remembering that to be kind to others and importantly realize that this includes ourselves, so make that a priority. And I've noticed some other comments coming through around mindfulness and positive affirmations. So it sounds like we're doing some great stuff as a community to be able to thrive. So we've got some time now for a Q&A. While you think about some of the questions you might want to ask, yes, Di, the Hub of Hope is on an app, so you would then be able to download that onto your phone. So if you want to pop your questions in for us so we can do the Q&A, while we're doing that, I'm going to launch another poll that you can complete while we're waiting for your questions to come in. There we go. Okay, so that should now pop up on your screen. I don't know about you, Emma, but I'm picking up tips along the way here as well from this Q&A.
I know. I was reading through some of the Q&A and someone said radical, I can't remember what it was, but it was another way when we're talking about resilience, radical acceptance. I thought, I'd look into that one. I've not come across that, but apparently it's it's a good, I'm flicking up really quickly to see if I can find that question again, but that comment. But yeah, someone said radical radical acceptance or something along those lines was quite a good tool to use for resilience. So I'm going to be researching that. So thank you for that tip.
Cool. Sounds great. Oh, okay, so we're getting immediate feedback here. So Alison is saying that she's just downloaded the app. Wow, there we go. Okay. Yeah, so we've got some people downloading the app, which is great. We're getting your poll results. I appreciate that not everyone's going to have access to the poll depending on what device that you're joining us from. But really do appreciate your feedback. If you're able to put it into the Q&A, that would be great. Just let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, I think we've got a question from Vanessa. She's saying if you could only do one thing every day to look after your own well-being, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one, isn't it? Just one
thing. That is a good one. What would I do? If I could, I'd nap for 40 minutes every day, because I think that's a good thing. I would try and pack in a power nap. But that's not answering the question. That if I could do it, that's the one thing I would do. I would try, either a nap or just have more downtime in between my meetings. So what I need to get a little bit better at is making sure that I pepper in those downtimes throughout my meetings or my calls, so that I'm actually away from laptop and more kind of just taking a breath of fresh air or a minute.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And for me, I think like the extreme would be to be able to cycle every day, because it's not just about the exercise, it's that freedom that it gives me when I'm on my bike, and it takes me back to being a kid again as well. So I suddenly become very childlike. So I guess from that then it's really, how can I inject that like childlike feeling in my day, have some more fun. That's definitely what I would want to be doing and continue doing every day. So we'll give it a couple more seconds for the poll. So if you are able to join our poll, then have a go. At the moment, the tool that is looking most popular is the 10 Keys to Happier Living. So that's really good. That's interesting. And we've seen some movement on boundaries, and we've seen some movement on confidence and how we feel. So just give you a couple more seconds to be able to join our poll, and then I'll share the results. Have we got any other...
Yes, I've got a question that says, do you provide workshops online for young people? That's a good question, actually. I might need to take this away and ask. I know we do have our youth courses that we're looking to put online, but that's more so for individuals that actually work with children or work with youth rather than actual youth. So I will take that question away and hopefully find a way to respond back to you. Is it Arijata? Excuse me if I didn't pronounce your name properly, but that's a very good question that I will take offline. I'm sorry I couldn't answer that in the session now, but it's definitely one that I can ask and kind of see how we can answer that if we do the session again. Can you see any other questions, Emma?
I'm just seeing loads of tips, which I'm loving. So we've got a book from Jenny saying, be more toddler. I love that. A leadership education from our little learners. We've had some lovely feedback about today's session as well, Emma, which is always nice to see.
Oh, it's brilliant to hear.
And you've got some fans of the power nap.
Yes, I'm all about sleep. You don't understand. Sleep is the best thing.
Has the session been recorded so you can share? That's a good question.
Yes, it has. Yes, it is being recorded.
Brilliant. So we can look at how that can be shared and distributed later on down the line. Okay, so we've got a question coming in from Juliet. I find it difficult to say my stress cup is full, although my family members still keep asking for support. How can I say this to them without looking like I don't care? Okay, so there's some immediate thoughts that come to my mind around this one, which is options. Options are always good. So there's some great books that around being able to say no, but in a nice way. So it might be that you can say, I'm not able to do this right now, but I can do this. That's kind of some of the thoughts that are coming into my head. But also, you know, there's other thoughts around, can you work with family members about looking at their stress buckets and how you can help each other support? What are your thoughts on that one, Emma?
I always think it's a question that it's something that you invite rather than you go and do, because I think it's about boundaries and respect. So I think whilst you can have those conversations with family members and friends, it's how you go about having those conversations, because what you don't want to end up being is somebody who is patronizing or somebody who is coming up to want to fix things without actually engaging in the person you want to fix it with. And also, I think you have to understand what your relationship is like. If you've got a great relationship with family members, then it's probably more easier to have the conversations. But it's, you know, I think it's very much around not wanting to go directly to solve the solution without actually understanding the lay of the land you're wanting to go into. So, you know, I think like there are people that probably are aware of their stresses and, you know, the stress buckets, but might not necessarily want to share with it. So I think it's analyzing the situation and understanding that you have to approach it with caution, regardless of whether it's someone that you know or don't know. It's understanding who you're talking to and how you can bring out that conversation without them feeling that they have to shut down, or they're feeling that they're being what's the word I'm looking for, ambushed into having the conversation.
Yeah, it's a really good one though. It's and I'm sure it comes up a lot as well. Is kind of, you know, because you've got family, they feel like they can perhaps lean on you sometimes more than others.
Yeah. And I think it's having those healthy boundaries within the family as well, because it is fine to then, if you can't say that to family, who can you say that to? I think it's, again, how you voice how you're feeling. So again, so that they understand and they can empathize with you and not feel that you're shutting them down because you don't want to get involved. It's more kind of, I do have boundaries, but I need a moment, or, you know, how do we help each other rather than me just help you?
Yeah, exactly. Teamwork. Love that. We had a question and I've just lost it. Where is it? It's coming from Penny. She's saying, what tips do you have for avoiding burnout? Oh, it's a good one.
Oh, that is a good one. It's a difficult one. So I would suggest, if you know, again, to avoid burnout, I think it's a twofold thing. It's very much around actually where is the pressure of the burnout coming from. So again, if it's to do with, for example, work, it's around, can you have a conversation with your line managers about the workload you're going through and actually how you can manage that in a much more manageable way. So I think there's a conversation that's involved around if it's to do with workload or amounts of pressures from a work perspective. Can you have a conversation around how you are feeling, how you can and actually look for solutions together, whether it's your line manager or your project manager, whoever you're working with, to have that conversation. And also, you know, I think there's things around when you are, so I mentioned I need to have a bit more time in between my meetings, but I also know I'm very good at managing my diary. So for me, it's very much a case of making sure that my meetings are very much productive in the sense of what they need to be. So asking the questions, do I need to be in this meeting? What are you expecting from me from this meeting so I can prep? But actually maybe starting meetings a bit earlier and ending them earlier. So, you know, we have a rule at Mental Health First Aid England where we have 25, where there are meetings in the diary for 30 minutes, we tend to end our meetings at 25, either 25 or 45, to give you enough breaks between the two or next meeting so that you at least have a moment to gather yourself or take a break. I'll also be quite hard in terms of just putting in boundaries. So again, if you start and finish at certain times of the day, make sure you continue with that so you're not kind of creeping into the night while you're working. And if you're finding that difficult, find yourself an accountability buddy, as I like to call them. So, you know, if you are in a house of mate, if you're sharing a house with housemates, you know, make sure that if 5 o'clock comes and you're still working, and you said that you're going to clock off at 5, somebody's telling you, you know what, remember, let's do something else, or let's clock off. So, you know, having that. So we've got, you know, quite a lot of, there's also quite a lot of suggestions on our website around how you can deal with burnout in terms of what you can put in place when you're working remotely. As the links come in, I'll hand over to Emma. But I mean, that's some of some of the suggestions, and I hope you find them helpful around how to deal with burnout.
I love that, Emma, and I can totally relate to that. And I think having, when working from home as well, just like at the end of the day, making sure you do shut the laptop, and it's having those change in states as well. So shutting the laptop, putting it away. Right now I'm in, mum mode to go and cook dinner and stuff like that. So brilliant. Okay. So we've shared the useful links. So these are some links that will take you to those great resources. It's been fantastic talking with you today, Emma. I feel like I could just talk to you all day. And it's been great getting the feedback and hearing the stories from our mental health first aider community as well. And just look forward to the conversation. Just keep continuing, why not just keep talking about how we need to look after ourselves and role model that for others. And thanks for everyone getting stuck in on the polls as well.
And we will respond to all the Q&As as well. So thank you for the time. I know we have run over by a minute or two, but we appreciate those that are still be able to stay till the end with us. And we hope that you have found this session really useful. I've really enjoyed sharing and talking to you, Emma, as well. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. We will be having different webinars in the series, so do look out for that. And we probably might rerun this again at another point in time. So otherwise, stay well, stay healthy. And just remember, you are more than enough.
Yeah, love that.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.